All right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're shifting gears, a bit pun, very much intended, and taking a closer look at the world of commercial truck driving.
Really excited to dig into this one. It's something that affects everyone on the road, even if you've never sat behind the wheel of a big rig yourself.
Exactly. And to help us navigate this massive topic,
Again with the puns, I love
maybe
it.
you know me, but really, we've got our expert here to guide us through some seriously eye-opening training materials from CDL Solutions, led by trekking veteran Ken Hall.
Ken really knows his stuff.
Yeah.
He's seen it all from coast to coast, and he doesn't sugarcoat the risks. One of the biggest issues he tackles head-on is distracted driving.
Distracted driving. I feel like we hear about that all the time, though. Is it really that different for truck drivers?
Oh, it's different, all right. I mean, sure, texting while driving is dangerous for anyone, but imagine doing it in a vehicle that weighs 80,000 pounds and can't stop on a dime.
Okay, that's a terrifying thought, and the statistics back it up, right?
Absolutely. The Large Truck Crash Causation Study, that's the LTCCS for you acronym lovers out there, found that a whopping 8% of large truck crashes are caused by distractions outside the vehicle.
8%! That's huge! But what kind of distractions are we talking about here? I mean, beyond the obvious texting and driving scenario.
Right, because it's not always about what's happening inside the cab. Think about it. Truck drivers are dealing with massive blind spots, constantly scanning their mirrors, navigating traffic, and trying to stay alert on long hauls.
So even something that seems minor to a car driver, like changing the radio station, could be a big deal for a trucker.
Exactly. And Ken Hall really drives this point home in the training. He uses this really vivid example. Imagine driving the length of a football field without looking at the road.
Whoa, that's terrifying.
Right. But that's what even a few seconds of distraction can mean at highway speeds. And those seconds can be the difference between a near miss and a catastrophic accident.
So it's not just about staying off the phone, it's about staying laser focused on the road every second, which, let's be honest, is easier said than done. Our brains aren't exactly wired for that kind of sustained attention, are they?
You hit the nail on the head. We like to think we're master multitaskers, but the science tells a different story. Our brains are simply not designed to handle multiple complex tasks simultaneously, especially when one of those tasks is safely operating a massive vehicle.
So even something like chatting with a passenger or fiddling with the radio can really mess with a truck driver's focus.
Absolutely. And it's not just about taking your eyes off the road either. Even hands-free devices, while they might seem safer, can still cause cognitive distractions.
Cognitive distractions, what does that even mean?
It means that even if your hands are on the wheel and your eyes are on the road, your brain is still trying to process information from that phone call or that podcast or that GPS announcement.
So it's like your brain is trying to do a million things at once.
Exactly. And when your brain is overloaded, it's less able to react quickly and effectively to changing road conditions. It's like trying to solve a complex math problem while juggling chainsaws.
Okay, that's a visual I won't soon forget, but you're making a really important point. So we've established that distractions are bad, no matter how small they might seem. But what about the law? What does it actually say about all this for CMV drivers? Can they even glance at their phone at a red light?
Nope. The
Yeah.
regulations are crystal clear. Using a handheld device while driving a commercial vehicle. Big no-no unless it's a genuine emergency. We're talking calling 911 or reporting an accident, that kind of thing.
So even if they're stopped at a light, engine off.
Even then, these regulations are all about preventing distractions before they happen.
That makes sense. So let's say a driver does slip up. What are we talking about here? A slap on the wrist.
No, absolutely not. We're talking serious consequences, and for good reason.
Like what? What are we talking about? Fines. Points on their license.
All of the above, and then some. The fines for violating these regulations can be hefty, and those fines are just the beginning. Drivers can rack up points on their licenses, which can lead to higher insurance premiums.
Ouch, that hurts.
Exactly. And in some cases, depending on the severity of the offense and whether it's a repeat violation, drivers could even face jail time.
Jail time. Wow. Okay, so this is serious business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But perhaps the biggest concern for professional drivers is the impact that these violations can have on their CDL, their commercial driver's license.
Right, that's their livelihood. What kind of impact are we talking about?
Well, if a driver is convicted of using a handheld cell phone while driving a CMV 2 or more times, their CDL can be disqualified. That means they're off the road for a minimum of 60 days for a second offense.
60 days. That's 2 months without a paycheck.
Exactly. And if they get a third conviction, 120 days. That's 4 months out of work. These regulations are in place for a reason. They're designed to keep everyone safe, drivers, and everyone else on the road. The message is clear. Put the phone down, eyes on the road, every single time.
Wow, those penalties are no joke. It makes you realize how important it is to stay focused behind the wheel, especially when you're responsible for a vehicle that big. But even with the best intentions, there's another layer of challenge for these drivers, the sheer pressure they face out on the road.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine this. You're on a tight deadline, you've got miles to go before you sleep, which probably wasn't enough to begin with, and you're stuck in traffic. It's a recipe for stress, and that stress can easily lead to what Ken Hall calls aggressive driving.
Okay, aggressive driving, we hear that term a lot, but what does it actually look like for truck drivers? Is it just a little horn honking, or are we talking something more serious?
Oh, it's definitely more than a little horn honking. We're talking speeding, tailgating, weaving in and out of traffic, basically putting yourself and everyone else on the road at risk because you're letting that frustration get the best of you.
And I'm guessing those behaviors are even more dangerous when you're behind the wheel of an 80,000-pound truck.
Exactly. It's like the difference between being stung by a bee and being charged by a bull. Both are unpleasant, but one is going to leave a much bigger mark. Ken Hall actually makes a really important distinction in the training between aggressive driving and road rage,
Yeah.
because those two terms often get used interchangeably, but they're not quite the same thing.
That's interesting. I'll admit I'm not always clear on the difference myself. Can you break it down for us?
Sure. Think of aggressive driving as like the gateway drug to road rage. It's that initial surge of frustration, that me-first mentality that leads to reckless behavior. But road rage, that's a whole other beast. That's when that aggression escalates to the point of intent to harm.
Okay, so it's about crossing that line from recklessness to actually wanting to use your vehicle as a weapon.
Exactly. Like forcing another car off the road or brake checking someone.
Scary stuff. So aggressive driving might be the starting point, but even that can have disastrous consequences. So how do we combat it? What does Ken Hall suggest truck drivers do to manage that pressure and avoid becoming a danger to themselves and others?
Well, he really dives into the psychology behind it, which I found fascinating. He talks about how our brains are hardwired to react to stress with a fight or flight response. And in a high-pressure driving situation, that can often manifest as aggression, even if we know better.
So it's almost like an instinct then. That's a little unnerving, to be honest.
It is. But like any instinct, understanding it is the first step to managing it. Ken Hall offers some really practical tips in the training. For starters, he's a huge advocate for sleep.
Well, that makes sense. A tired brain isn't exactly known for making the most rational decisions.
Exactly. And truckers are notorious for running on fumes. But fatigue just amplifies stress and impairs judgment, making aggressive driving more likely.
Okay, so getting enough sleep check. What else? What other strategies does he recommend?
He also stresses the importance of planning ahead, like really anticipating delays, factoring in extra time for unexpected traffic, having a plan B for those just-in-case moments. Even small things, like listening to calming music or practicing mindfulness techniques while driving, can make a difference.
Interesting. So it's about controlling what you can control and finding ways to de-escalate your own stress before it becomes a problem for everyone else on the road. Easier said than done, right? Especially when you're on a deadline.
Oh, for sure. But I think that's the mark of a true professional, prioritizing safety even when the pressure is on.
Absolutely. Now, we've been focusing on preventing aggressive driving in truckers, but let's be real, anyone can be on the receiving end of it. So, what happens when you find yourself confronted by another driver's aggression, maybe even road rage? It's easy to say don't engage, but in the heat of the moment,
Oh, I know, right? Your instinct is to stand your ground, maybe give a little back.
it's tough, right? Like your gut is telling you to fight fire with fire, but then logic kicks in and you're like, wait, that's a terrible idea. They've got 2 tons of steel on their side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why Ken Hall's advice in these situations is so important. He really emphasizes that your safety is paramount. Don't engage.
But what if it's more than just some frustrated driver in a beat-up sedan? What if someone is really full-on road raging and they happen to be behind the wheel of a massive truck? Is there ever a time to engage?
Well, that's where things get really tricky. And honestly, in those situations, Ken Hall's advice is pretty clear. Don't try to be a hero. If you feel genuinely threatened, if another driver is following you aggressively, trying to force you off the road, your priority is to get yourself to safety, period.
Okay, that makes sense. So what does that look like in practice, though? Do you just, pull over and hope for the best?
Not exactly. Remember, the goal is to remove yourself from a potentially dangerous situation.
Cool.
So if possible, You want to try to drive to a well-lit, populated area, maybe a gas station, a shopping center, someplace where there are other people and cameras around. If you can safely get to a police station, even better. And of course, call 911 immediately.
So no dramatic standoffs, just strategic retreating and letting the professionals handle it.
Exactly. This isn't about who's right or wrong in that moment.
Yeah.
It's about protecting yourself and everyone else on the road.
Gotcha. Safety first. But I have to ask, is there anything you can do after an incident like that? Or even just witnessing some seriously aggressive driving, it just feels so, I don't know, unsatisfying to just let it go.
I hear you, but there is something you can do. Report it. And Ken Hall, he's really adamant about this point. Reporting aggressive driving, especially when it involves a commercial vehicle, isn't about getting someone in trouble. It's about potentially preventing future accidents, maybe even saving lives.
So how do we do that effectively? I mean, do you just call the non-emergency police line? Is there a special hotline for road rage? What information is actually helpful to have?
Well, generally, the more information you can provide, the better, but only if you can gather it safely. Obviously, don't put yourself in harm's way to get a license plate number or anything like that. But if you can safely note the vehicle description, the license plate if you can get it, the location, the direction of travel, that's all incredibly helpful. And if you happen to remember any identifying features of the driver, that's even better.
So basically, channel your inner eyewitness and provide as much detail as possible.
Exactly. And then, depending on your location and how serious the situation was, you can contact the authorities. That might mean calling 911 if it's an emergency, calling the non-emergency police line, or even reporting the incident online. A lot of states have online reporting systems for traffic incidents these days.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We explored the hidden dangers of distracted driving, unpacked the pressures that can lead to aggressive driving, and even talked about how to stay safe when confronted with road rage, all through the lens of commercial truck driving.
And the thing is, even though we focused on truck drivers, these are lessons that apply to every single one of us who gets behind the wheel. We all face distractions, we all feel that frustration in traffic, and we all share the responsibility to make the roads a little less chaotic, a little less stressful, and a lot safer.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes we forget that those big rigs we share the road with are driven by people just like us, people who are trying to do their jobs safely and get home to their families. So the next time you see an 18-wheeler, give them a little wave, maybe a little extra space, and remember what we talked about today.
The most important thing is to arrive at your destination safely, every single time.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's a wrap on another deep dive, folks. We hope you found this journey into the world of commercial truck driving as fascinating and thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, drive safe out there.